Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I think it's afternoon for everybody. We'll get started here in just a minute. Looks like Lael just joined.
Yep, I'm here. Yeah, let's give maybe 2 minutes for everybody who's going to be joining to join, and then we'll just start. All right, looks like we have most of the people, I think, who are joining. We had about five more. So, Austin, you think we're ready to go?
Yep, I think we're good to go.
Perfect. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining this workshop. My name is Lael Wilson, and I am one of the inside partner account managers for Aruba, and I cover Maryland, DC, Delaware, and East PA. And we also have Austin on here as well, who's co-hosting this. And Austin is also a inside channel partner account manager and covers the Great Lakes and West PA and Ohio. Is that right, Austin? I think.
Yep, that's
Um,
correct. Great
Perfect.
Lakes. Yeah.
And then we have our one of our systems engineers, Ryan Cassidy. He's going to be doing the workshop and leading the workshop today. Thank you so much for joining, Ryan. We have a team of, for those of you who don't know, we have a whole team of systems engineers that work with us. And Ryan's the one that's kind of linked to Austin and myself, as well as a couple others. So we enlisted his help for this workshop. So just a quick little intro. We'll do, if you want to put all of your questions in the chat, the Q&A. We'll answer all those at the end. Some of the questions might be answered within the workshop, so but we will answer those at the end of the demo and the presentation. So today we're going to be covering kind of a key part of our SASE portfolio, which is our Secure Service Edge, or SSE. So SSE does enable, secure access for, any user to business applications, whether they're hosted on the cloud or on-prem. Unlike traditional solutions, our SSE ensures users can only kind of access what they're authorized to see and use. And with a single interface, administrators can gain granular visibility and deep analytics for every session, and strengthens, overall security. So that's kind of what we're going to cover today, really briefly. And I'll just kind of hand it over to Ryan. And again, if you have any questions, please put those in the Q&A, and we'll answer those at the end.
Yes. Thank you, Lael and Austin. As mentioned, I'm Ryan Cassidy. I'm one of the sales engineers here at Aruba. I've been with HP for a little over 12 years now. I was an employee when we were Hewlett Packard before we split the company. Same year we split is the same year that we actually purchased Aruba. I've worked primarily in education services for the company. I've worked with our storage products, our compute products, and then of course our networking products. So I've worked with our ProCurve switching and our Commerce switching, and have since moved into working with the Aruba switching. I've worked with various Aruba groups over the years in education services to host some of their training and workshops. And then I was able to actually move into the Aruba organization a little over a year ago. So I'm excited to have this discussion today with everyone. We're going to have basically a high level overview of our SSE product, which actually derived and came from Access Security, which was a company we purchased a little over 2 years ago. And we're still getting them integrated into the company, and we kind of moved them into our overall SASE group. We had another company we purchased for our SD-WAN, our Edge Connect product a number of years ago, Silver Peak. So Access really fits in very well with that product line. So I am, again, this is going to be kind of high level. I am going to share some slides here. I'm not going to go into presentation mode because I'm going to jump around a bit. I do have two different slide decks I may jump around with. I do want to kind of show you how pricing looks on the product. Kind of it's price per user, but kind of give you an idea of how that works. I want to log into the management portal for SSE and kind of show you that, and then I have a client I'm going to log into and actually show you how the connectivity works, both clientless for Z10A, also with a client with Z10A, and also our content filtering, our SWIG product. So you can actually start to look at your traffic and maybe block certain traffic, especially for those users that may not be sitting behind the firewall in the corporate data center, or if they are, you can still do that. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. And I'll try not to bore everyone with these slides. And I only have, it's less than 2 dozen, and we may not jump through every single slide. But again, this is kind of, insights into SSE and kind of introducing our Access product. We still use the name Access. That's the company we purchased. We are rebranding that. So basically, it's going to be rebranded into HPEAruba SSE moving forward. And what this kind of entails is this kind of gives you an idea of your traditional hub and spoke network. And you can kind of see here, some companies still have the hub and spoke. Most have moved away from it. But you had your data center. And typically, in the past, your data center was on site at one of your physical locations, but it possibly could be in the cloud. But any of your devices that needed connectivity, whether it's into the data center or even external to the internet, maybe to AWS, maybe to SaaS applications, everything had to flow through the data center for security purposes. That's where your firewall was. So everything needed to go through the data center, go through the firewall, whether it was, your corporate laptops, a phone, whether someone's, at headquarters, at a remote site, traveling. So everything was tied back to that data center. Worked great at the time, but it's pretty cumbersome because everything is hairpin. So obviously, previously a lot of this data up top, was hosted in the data center, and obviously people have moved a lot of that data out, and they're hosting it externally. So why go through the data center? to get to those applications. It's great you're doing SaaS. Everyone's using the public cloud. Mobility is really huge, because users aren't necessarily tied to a desk anymore. Um, they may be in the office, but they may be only in the office a day or two a week. They may be traveling. They may be at home. They may be on a train. We want to make sure that users get that full connectivity, no matter where they're at, and they're getting a good experience. So this was kind of, the old world approach. So we kind of moved to for a period of time, and again, this is kind of the progression of networks, and you still have some companies doing this, but to kind of solve some of those problems, companies move their firewalls out into the cloud, virtual firewalls. So instead of just having that single firewall in a data center and you're having that connectivity straight to the data center, we've got these virtual firewalls out on the internet. Also, they're putting firewalls at these various locations, um, and this worked. This did solve some issues there. So now this user, when it needs to get to Workday, they don't necessarily need to go through the data center. They don't need to hairpin that traffic to get to Workday, and it's still secure. Obviously, this is still pretty complex and costly. It solved some issues, but it created some issues. And one of those is complexity, and along with complexity, your cost. um, and then risk, because you still have all this traffic passing around, and now you've got all these various firewalls, whether they're physical devices, virtual devices. So the industry in general wanted to solve that issue. What can we do to make this better? And that's where everyone has kind of moved into their basically their security as a service. And that's where the SSE comes in, Security Service Edge. SSE is not an HPEAruba term. That's an industry term. I don't know if that was coined by Gartner or not, but we'll talk a little bit later about SASE, which is your SD-WAN and your SSE, and together those become SASE. And definitely that one is a Gartner term, but these are industry terms. So these are not, you're going to hear these same terms from other vendors. So we sort of have our next gen SSE here, and you can see now your connectivity isn't necessarily hairpin back to your data center. You don't have all of these firewalls, especially these physical firewalls that could be outdated, vulnerable at your various locations. Your firewalls are basically out in the cloud at this point. And now, no matter where that person is, what type of device, whether they're in an office, out of an office, they have full connectivity to company resources in a secure way. It's unified. So obviously, we have our 4 pillars with SSE, our ZTNA, SWIG, CASB, and DIM, and I'll go into a little more detail on those. They can all use the same policy service. It's secure for all resources. It doesn't matter if it's a private application, if it's an internet site, if it's a SaaS application, it's secure. Intelligent Cloud Global. It's scalable. So no matter if you start off with 100 users and you want to scale up to 1,000, 10,000, you can do that literally overnight. There's not going to be no hardware investment on you. There's not going to be any ramp up time. Really quick to scale out. A lot of companies go in very small, especially when they're doing their proof of concept. And even when they first roll this out, they may roll it out to their IT department first, or they may roll it out to their accounting department. And if things work great, then they start rolling it out to the full company. So it's really easy to scale, very fast. Tons of smart routing, and I'll show you that on another slide deck here. I didn't have time to actually incorporate these 2 slide decks last night because I was actually working on the lab portion that I'm going to show you here in a few minutes. But we're hosting out in all the major carriers. We're out in AWS, Azure, Google for our backbone. So obviously, there are times, and not very often, where there may be an AWS issue. Well, guess what? No problem. We're hosted in Azure and Google also. If all three of those go down the same day, the same hour, the same minute, then we've got other problems to worry about at that point. We've got tons of edge and pops out there. We do a lot of smart routing, looking for the best path for a device to connect and create those tunnels. And again, I mentioned a little bit here, but the user experience. We want to make sure the user has the best experience. We want to make sure that IT is proactively looking at what's happening with users. We want to make sure that IT is notified when there's an issue, hopefully before a user even realizes there's an issue. So we've kind of built out this next gen, basically your security as a service. And again, there's 4 pillars, and I'll kind of show you that in a few minutes too. You don't have to go all in on day one. You can build off of these pillars. You can start with ZTNA and then add on SWG, and then maybe add on your CASB and DIM. Or you can start with SWG and build from there, or you can start with ZTNA and SWG. So it's going to be kind of up to you how you do it, but we're not forcing a customer to go all in on day one and pay for something they're not going to be using. You can take baby steps and kind of go through that process. So let me kind of show you. Let me pull this other slide deck over that I have and skip through this one. This one, we kind of went through this slide in a different format with the other slide deck. But what I wanted to kind of show you here is first, these 4 pillars. We kind of mentioned those briefly, but these are the 4 pillars to SSE. Your ZTNA, which is your Zero Trust Network Access. Basically, it's a VPN alternative, and it's agent or agentless. The agentless, that's pretty neat there. You can connect via a web GUI and have what you would typically have with a VPN without any locally installed software. In some cases, you're going to want the agent. You have a little more, you have some more options in there with the agent, such as device posturing. Maybe you want to also check that device that's connecting. Not only do you want to check the username and password, but you want to make sure that the device itself meets requirements. It's got the correct OS, it's got correct patches, it's got a firewall, virus software. But at the same time, agentless comes in too, because in some cases, maybe you don't control that device. Maybe it's a contractor, and maybe they don't want to install your agent on their device, or maybe it belongs to their company and their company doesn't allow that. So there's some options there with agentless and agent. And again, I like to call it a VPN alternative. It could definitely be a VPN replacement at the same time. But in some cases, there may still be a need for your company to have that true VPN connectivity, but maybe not for every user. There's a lot of security risk with VPN. First and foremost, when a user connects via VPN, you're giving them an IP address on your network. And at that point, then they can start traversing the network, not only north and south, but obviously east-west. So anytime you can prevent a device from truly becoming part of your network is a great thing. And I'll show you more about that. So you can actually grant access to applications without the need for that device itself to be part of your true network. You're basically going to build a tunnel from that device into your network through the cloud platform, and that is going to require a local connector within your environment, and I'll kind of show you that too. Again, another one of the pillars here is going to be SWG, which is your secure web gateway. A lot of you probably know Zscaler out on the market. We actually use Zscaler here at HPE internally, at least for the time being. We have replaced our VPN with ZTNA. So I use ZTNA on a daily basis with the agent. Haven't had any problems. I've been using it for roughly a year now. I was in the pilot group, working great. Eventually, we're going to move over and start using Swig. And actually, we are using certain features of Swig because I believe we did start blocking some sites recently. So again, Swig would be kind of a replacement for products such as Zscaler, and that's just going to do your filtering. In the past, all that was done at your local physical firewall. Obviously, not every user is sitting in an office, so you still want to make sure you're filtering their traffic if they're at home, and you don't want to hairpin their traffic back to the office, so you want to filter it going directly to the internet. And basically, that's where your firewall as a service comes in. We also have CASB, which is Cloud Access Security Broker, and that's just going to secure access to your SaaS applications. So you're out here using Dropbox, you're out there using Salesforce, any of those SaaS applications. Obviously, those are protected by username and password, but you can control those further. You can block uploads and downloads. Actually see what people are doing. Just because they have a username and password, you don't want company information to leave the company or be uploaded. So that's where you get in that CASB piece. And then the other pillar here is going to be our DEM, which is our digital experience monitoring. And this is just going to be your constant monitoring of all user activity um, to see what's happening with those users, to make sure there's a good experience. It's going to help improve network operations. So hopefully you can get some insights from that and some changes that need to be made to improve that. And also when there is an issue, hopefully your mean time to resolution is going to be reduced with them. So let me kind of show you here briefly, and this is going to be what your typical ZTNA would look like. You got a user that wants to connect from their device back into the network, and how would that look? So we have this slide here. So over here on the very far right would be an end user and a device. And they want to connect to an application over here on the left in their local corporate office, data center, what it may be. So whether it's agent or agentless, you would broker that connection. And what our software is going to do is, obviously we are out there, as I mentioned, with Oracle, Azure, AWS, Google. It's going to broker that connection back through one of the major players, but it's going to choose your best connectivity. So in this case, it's looking at, your latency, and it's going to choose, hey, this one looks best here at 23 milliseconds. And again, your next hop is going to do the same thing again. It's going to look and see, where's my best connectivity at. Eventually, you're going to have to hop over that final hop into your environment. And that's where I mentioned earlier, you would need, for that connectivity, for that tunnel to be built, you do need a local connector. And that can be installed in your local environment, whether it's virtual, whether it's on bare metal. It's basically a lightweight Linux connector. It doesn't really do a whole lot besides broker those connections. It's not storing data. I've had some of these crash on me. I've spun a new one up within 30 minutes and connectivity restored. Obviously, you're going to want one or more connector, more than one connector for redundancy purposes, and depending on your load balancing on how many connections you got come in. So I mean, you could have, dozens of connectors. Those connectors would need to be located locally on that network that you need access to broker that connectivity. You can install these in the cloud too, but you need to make sure you have that connectivity back into the cloud for that connection. But that's what brokers that connection between that end user device and then that end user application. Again, tons of redundancy built in. We're doing a lot of geo proximity routing. So we know where you're located at. We want to make sure we're choosing the best hops. We're doing smart routing. If one of these links goes down, it's really almost automatic. It's going to recreate that tunnel and choose the next best link. If this link gets congested, it's going to notice that you've got a better option over here. So if this one jumps up to 200 milliseconds, it's going to look over here and it may decide, you know what, let me go ahead and move that over to this 82 millisecond connection because that's going to give a better experience. All that's going to happen in the background. The user's not going to notice it, which is great. So let me go back over here to my main slide deck. Here are a few of the benefits of SSE. Of course, security and your true zero trust, granular, so you can kind of choose who needs what access and not just everybody, gets that same access. The big thing is enforce your least privilege access. And then, of course, you want to prevent data loss at the end of the day. Productivity, you want to make sure your users, the end users, they don't care about all this. I mean, they do when it works. When it doesn't work, they care. But at the end of the day, they want to make sure when they plug in, when they connect, that they have that same level of service no matter where they're at. If they're at home, great. If they're in a coffee shop, if they're in the office, if they're in a branch office, if they're traveling, if they're overseas, they want to make sure they have that same connectivity. And then simplicity. Trying to keep your SSE under one vendor umbrella is always great, so that you don't, you're not using ZTNA from one vendor, your SWIG from another one. So having all that under one umbrella is great, and being able to use the same management portal, being able to use the same policies. You want it to minimize that complexity for your IT department. You also want to be able to scale. You want to be able to scale this. You want to be able to roll this out to a large number of devices and users as needed. And at the end of the day, you want to hopefully maybe save some money because you don't have all these appliances out there. Anytime there's an appliance, whether it's hardware or physical, there's going to be a cost. There's going to be real estate costs of you having to put that and mount that. Obviously, if you've got a data center, that's not that big of a deal. But if you're looking at some of your smaller offices, you've got to have a closet. It's got to be secured. There's going to be some power costs, which may be minimal. But then there's going to be your licensing cost, every year. And your management cost, and then maybe having to send someone to that site when there's an issue so they can physically verify the cabling on that device. So anytime you can simplify that is great. We're kind of well, I'm going to speak on this one briefly. This is just a few of our customers that have been using SSC for a while. I'm going to mention VisionWorks because I just went in for my first eye exam in many, many, many years, and I now have a pair of glasses. And I went to VisionWorks. And when I was in there getting my glasses and I was in the room waiting on the doctor to come in and give me the final say so, I kind of peeked over at the computer there and I noticed then they were running our SSE product. I saw the little icon in the corner, which is pretty neat to me. I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't realize they were a customer of ours. And then, of course, I pulled up this presentation and realized, okay, yeah, so they truly are. That was just kind of a fun story. I actually took a quick, there were no records on there, and if there would have been, it would have been my records on the screen anyway, but I did take a quick snapshot of where I was and our icon there. I tend to do that when I see any of our software or hardware out in the wild. So that was just kind of neat there to bring up. There's only a few more slides here, and we'll actually kick over to the demo. This is kind of going to show you our whole full SASE and zero trust architecture. So we're talking about SSE today. We also have our Edge Connect SD-WAN, and together those two make up SASE. We don't want to forget about NAC over here. So your ClearPass, your CloudAuth, because obviously for a user to plug in, especially if they're in the office, for them to plug in a physical cable to a network jack or through Wi-Fi, you want to make sure that they have the correct permissions. You don't want everyone to connect to Wi-Fi to have just an IP address out on the network that has access to everything. You want to give that person a role, whether they're a guest, whether they're a contractor, whether they're an employee. The same thing goes for your physical jacks. People for the longest time, their security for their physical jacks was, well, the doors are locked at night. Oh, we have, we have a security staff, or we have a front desk. So nobody can ever plug into our jacks because they need physical access to our building. Well, that's not the case. There's tons of people that have access to your building that aren't employees. Again, contractors, guests, um, maintenance staff, anybody that's walking around that's in your space. Maybe they got through the front door and maybe they're okay to be there, but you don't necessarily want them to be able to plug in and get an IP address on the network, you know. So you want to make sure you do have that NAC access up front, and layer it with your SSC and your SD-WAN. And this is probably one of my last slides I'm going to share here. This kind of shows you the overall SASE. SASE is secure access, security edge. Again, these are not these are industry terms, not HPE terms. But what SASE does is when you bring together your full WAN edge, you know, your SD-WAN, and you bring together your SSC, that becomes your overall SASE platform. And obviously on the SSC side, we got ZTNA, our CASB, our SWIG, our firewall as a service, our experience monitoring. And then over here on the WAN side, you know, you got your software-defined WAN, your routing, your dynamic path selection, your WAN optimization. I mean, that's what's key these days is your WAN connectivity. You know, in the past, you know, everyone had their routers, their MPLS networks, their VPN tunnels between offices. We're still doing that, but you want to make sure you're doing the best routing. You know, a lot of people had private networks. You know, so yeah, they had that one-to-one connectivity between Office A and Office B, which wasn't always that fast. Usually a little more expensive. So just having a general AT&T or Comcast connectivity, you know, some of that fast broadband is great, but you want to make sure you layer that security on top of it. And there's tons of ways to optimize your WAN. Your acceleration, obviously going out to your SaaS applications that are already hosted out on the internet, you know, and just bringing in that whole network as a service. So you bring in your SD-WAN, you bring in your SSC, and that becomes your whole SASE platform. And let me browse through here. Yeah, I'll mention this really quick here. So again, this shows, this slide was more generalized just for SASE in general, and this kind of shows you where HPEAruba fits in. Our Edge Connect SD-WAN product here on the left, and then our SSC product here on the right. So we do have our Edge Connect, our SD branch. We have our micro branch. Both of those can be managed within Aruba Central to manage, you know, your headquarters branch, work from home, remote users. Once you move into our true Edge Connect SD-WAN, we have this orchestrator. This is actually managed outside of Aruba Central, but there is integrations with this product into Aruba Central. And the idea is over time to truly pull this into Aruba Central, so everything here on the left side is all fully managed within Aruba Central. Again, over here on the right, ZTNA, SWIG, CASB, DIM. This is all, again, managed outside of Aruba Central. It's also managed outside, separate from our Edge Connect product. But there is a huge integration with Edge Connect and SSE. So you have that full visibility. And again, the idea over time is going to be to truly get this integrated, whether this gets integrated into Edge Connect first, and then Edge Connect is integrated into Aruba Central, or whether it happens separately. The idea is to have our overall SASE platform managed via Aruba Central. And I think that's really the only slides here. I'm just browsing through real quick. Yeah. So we're just going to kind of go over, and I'm going to give a quick demo of ZTNA and SWIG. I will throw this in chat real quick. This is just a link out to some documentation for our Access product. I refer to this. I was in here last night doing a few things. There's a lot of good information here. Even if you don't have Access running yet, or you're not familiar with it, there's a lot of good information. And obviously, once you start to bring up a workspace on how to get various things set up, your IDPs, I do have Azure. I don't have my account tied into Azure just yet, so I'm using a local IDP, and I'll kind of point that out. But definitely look through here. There's a lot of good information on our SAC product. So let me get logged in to my workspace here. And this is going to be my dashboard. I'm not going to have a whole lot of activity because I don't use this on a daily basis. I don't have all my PCs at home going through SSE, but just overnight you can see I've got some activity here. So that gives you kind of an idea, and I just got a few users that logged in. So obviously a lot of good information on your insights on what's happening on your network. So basically I'm going to kind of just drill through here. Here's your identity providers. Of course, I'm using the internal database right now for ease of use for this. If you needed to tie in, we're supported with Azure, Okta, Ping, Jump Cloud, and of course SAML. Again, I'm using the internal. So of course I got my admin user, I've got my test user. I've also got a group here. Obviously, you probably want to create most of your policies based off of groups versus users, but you can do it either way. We'll go back up here. Connectors. We mentioned that you do need a connector. If you're going to be using ZTNA to get back into your network remotely, you need that local Linux install. It's really lightweight. It doesn't take a whole lot of resources. I've got two here. I've got one, this Rocky was actually a pre-configured OVA that you're able to download. There's still some post-configuration needed from there. And then another one, I spun up Ubuntu from scratch. And then again, did that post-configuration. The post-configuration is really easy because when you go to create a new connector, it gives you some options here to deploy your own server, deploy the OVA, or deploy in AWS. You can deploy this in AWS. Obviously, you're going to need connectivity back to AWS, and not just internet connectivity. AWS is going to need that VPN tunnel. So obviously, if you're deploying in AWS, you're probably using our Edge Connect product already, and you've got VPN tunnels built from AWS back to your offices so that you have that full connectivity. If you click right here, it's going to show you your server requirements, whether it's bare metal or virtual. It's 4 CPUs, 8 gigs of RAM, 40 gigs of hard drive. Nothing crazy. And here's the Linux versions that are supported. You typically want to go ahead and have that Linux machine already up and running at this point before you move forward, because I'm going to go in and just give it a name. I'm not actually going to spin one up, but this is what you would do. So in the background, if I already had my Linux machine spun up, but it's not configured yet, I would go in and create a name for it. I would pick a zone. You have your default connector zone built in, and you also have your log streaming zone built in. I created one home. I got a flat network, so I'm going to throw it in my home zone. Once you click next here, what it does is it's going to actually create that connector instance within the management platform, and it's going to give you this line to copy over to that connector. So basically you would need to copy this. It's a one-time code, so once you close, you cannot go back and get this code. You can always go back and delete that connector and do a new one, so not a big deal there. And I think there's a time limit on this too, maybe 15 minutes to actually copy and paste this, but you copy that, paste it into your CLI of your Linux machine, and that's going to do your post configuration and tie that connector into your workspace. So it's really simple. You can spin one of these up and really in a matter of minutes. You will notice up here in the upper right hand corner, anytime you make a change, you need to apply those changes. So in this case, I'll just go and commit that change. It's ready and waiting. If I already had this spun up, I could literally copy over that piece of code, and within probably 5-6 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, I would have a new connector ready to go. In this case, I've already got 2 up, so I'm not worried about this demo test. I can leave it. It doesn't hurt anything, or I can just go in and delete it. Again, when you make a change, you don't have to commit now, but eventually you need to commit that change for it to actually happen. So I'll go ahead and commit it. That connector's gone, not worried about it, but you do need a local connector for that connectivity. You also need destinations. So here are some various destinations I've created out here for users. So I've got access to ClearPass here. I've got some of these destinations are disabled, and I think that's because it's either a physical or virtual device that may be down at the moment, so we can ignore those. I can go delete them, but I probably need to go check and see what's happening with them. But you can see I do have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 destinations created. And obviously not every user needs access to these. So when you go and create your policy, either you grant a user or a group access to what applications they need access to. And these are just a mix here. You can see there's a switch GUI, an ILO, RDP, SSH, pretty neat. So these are really simple to create. I can go and create a new application. It shows you what is supported agentless, which is great. If it doesn't have that agentless tag, then of course you need an agent for that application to work. In this case, I'm just going to choose self-hosted real quick. I can go in and give this one demo test. Let's give it an IP address. Let's see. I think that goes somewhere. I don't think it's a secure connection. I think it's 8080. So we'll just kind of create that one real quick and throw it out there. Usually I take the defaults, at least for these demo purposes. And now you can see I've got a new application demo test I created just real quick there. Again, I need to apply my changes. And there we go. So I have various applications. Now you need to create some policies for those applications for access. So you want to go into your rules. And again, this is all very simple for what I'm doing in a lab environment. Obviously, it's going to be a little more complex out in the real world. But for instance, I created a demo policy. And we'll go and edit that and take a see what it looks like. So I named it demo. For identity, whether you're a test user or whether you're a default admin. So I did this by user. Technically, you should probably be doing this by group and not user, but in this case, I just did it by user. I left everything kind of default. I don't care about the source, the posture, the time, the destination. That's going to give you access to all of the applications. So I just chose any there for this case, and again, allow. So I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to show you what that looks like when you log in via a client now. So let me bring up my RDP machine here, and I can actually close this out. One thing I did want to point out here briefly, I mentioned NAC earlier, ClearPass or Cloud Auth. The client I'm using, I am actually using NAC, Cloud Auth from Aruba Central. So if we go down and look here for that client, I'm actually, for my wireless connectivity, I am doing 802.1 via Intra, granting me an employee role, so I have full access to my network through my AP here. So I do have true zero trust on that physical port. That's wireless, and then also from the physical port, because I do need to connect to that device via RDP for testing purposes. I just did simple MAC authentication through my switch. So I do verify that if anyone were to plug into my switch here, they're not going to get an IP address. They're not going to get any sort of VLAN unless they're known. Obviously, this device is known and this username is known. So we'll go back over now to my client here. And technically, this client is on the same network. So this client does have full access to these applications without access. But for the sake of being in a lab environment, because I do not have my traffic segregated, we'll show you what it would look like for an end user. So we're going to have an end user login client list here. Let me make sure I choose the right link. And basically, this would be the link they would access to via any web browser. Obviously, if you're using the client, you don't need to go through the web browser because you're already connected. But we're going to connect here with this user with these credentials. And now you can see this user has access to these applications. It's going to show you your recently used up here up top, but it's going to show you there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 applications. What I kind of want to point out here is, before we go any further, is if we go back to our policy, and actually let's go back to our destinations. We actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We actually have 7 applications, but that user is missing one. So if you look back at our policy, I have a second rule created here for ClearPass. So this user does not see ClearPass because I did put in a rule there that ClearPass can only be connected if you have the agent enabled. So basically, if the agent is disabled, and for this user right now it is, that user does not have access to ClearPass. Because there in some cases you want, even if it's a clientless application, you may want the agent there to do some posture checking before you allow them. Maybe maybe it's in a very important application that you don't want anything, any sort of virus activity to get into the application. So I did set that up here. So if that user does not have the agent, they do not see ClearPass. And as you can notice here, that user does not see ClearPass. And I'll show you how that looks in a few minutes once we enable the agent. But from here, it's pretty simple. The user clicks on an icon. Now they have access to that application. It opened that up in the second window. I've got access to, I think that's just a simple switch GUI. Again, here's one for an ILO on one of my servers. Again, just bringing up a simple web GUI to that ILO. Obviously, I'm here in my lab right now, but if I was remote, I got access right into that server, no problem. You can do RDP. So maybe I want to get into an RDP session. You can click on it. You've got a couple of options here. You can open up RDP in your web browser, or you can actually download a launcher file. So we'll do the file here. That's kind of neat. That's going to ask me for security reasons. So in this case, I'm going to open that launcher file. It's going to connect me to that RDP session. It's going to ask me for credentials. of course. And now you can see here, obviously I'm already in RDP, so we're kind of going a little deep here, but now I've got a second RDP session open up to there. Real simple. We can close out of that. You can click OK there. SSH, same thing with SSH. You can connect SSH here. You got an option to do it in a new tab, or you can do it on your SSH client. You click on that, it's going to give you a few credentials to copy and paste. We're just going to do this one into a web browser. And there we go. We've got SSH into a Linux machine, and that's actually one of my connectors. So that was pretty simple there. Again, let me show you real quick, 'cause I know we're running close on time and I want to make sure we open up for any questions. Let me show you what it looks like with the client. So I've exited out of the client, so I'm going to go ahead and open that client back up. And actually, I can just close out of that, and we'll kind of start from scratch here. So now we have the client, and it connected me automatically because I was already connected. But typically, you would go in and you would put in your username and password, similar to what I did before. But now I'm connected with the actual client itself. So again, if we open back up our browser, go back into our portal, you now see we have Aruba ClearPass. We didn't have that before because that was the requirement to actually get to ClearPass was that you needed the agent running. So we now have the agent running, and now we're able to actually log in to ClearPass if needed. So all of that's ZTNA related. Real quick on Swig for your content filtering. If we go back over to our management and look at our policy, I created a quick policy here named gambling. If a user is a member of demo test and their destination is gambling, then we're going to block that. So let's see how that works. Now this is only going when you get to Swig, that does require the agent. So the agent would need to be installed. There's various ways for you to install the agents. Users can actually go out themselves. And I'll show you that real quick. And they can install the agent from right here. They can download the agent, install it. Most IT departments are probably going to push that out, and they're probably going to put some requirements on there too, so that either it can't be disabled or it can't be uninstalled unless you have a password, because obviously you don't want users pausing it or uninstalling it or shutting it down to be able to get to sites they shouldn't go to. But that's going to kind of be left up to the partners and customers on how they handle that. But now, since we have the agent running, let's go out to a gambling website and see what happens. So we're just going to go out to Georgia Lottery. I happen to be located in Georgia, in Atlanta. So you can see here now, I'm being blocked from going to Georgia Lottery because it's a gambling site. And it shows me here, access to this page is blocked. Your organization policy prohibits you. It's got some information there. So if it's a site they feel like they do need access to and they needed to contact IT, they could copy this trace ID, also this URL, so that IT could look into why that's being blocked, because maybe it's not a true block that needs to happen. You can also customize this page to say what you need to say. You can also do redirects. But that just kind of shows you real simple there on how you can do your content filtering along with your ZTNA and use some of the same policies. So with that said, that's really all I had. I was just going to mention pricing real quick and how it's licensed. It is per user. So if you're using Iris, you should see under security, you should see your SSE options here. If you don't, let us know, because at one time this wasn't an option available for partners just yet. But I just want to show you real quick. It could be licensed as ZTNA only, as SWIG only, which is a fairly new option because previously it was ZTNA and then you had to bundle ZTNA and SWIG. So we did break it out where you can go with ZTNA, SWIG, and then of course ZTNA and SWIG. And then once you start moving into advanced is when you start adding in your CASB, your DLP, your DIM. We do have a couple of different um, success packages, whether it's basic, select, premier, and you can see these add on some deployment. They add on either a automated or designated customer success manager, some health checks. I do know to go into select or premier, there's going to be a minimum purchase as far as the amount of users. I don't know what that number is, but we're probably talking into the hundreds, if not into the thousands. But I can definitely chase that down for you. It is per year, so 1, 3, or 5 years. And then again, this is kind of your for ZTNA only. This would be your cost for 1 to 999 users per year would be 123 per user. If you go over 1,000, then you can see you get a little bit of a discount. And again, going over 10,000. If you add on, actually, let's just look at SWIG. I think SWIG is going to be a similar cost doing SWIG only. And if you added both in there, it's roughly about 200 per year per user. So that just gives you kind of a quick idea on how the licensing works, what the cost is. This is all retail pricing before discounting. So if there's any interest, just reach out to us and we can kind of talk through this. So with that said, I'm going to turn it back over to Leo and Austin. And if there's any questions, please let us know.
Yeah, I don't see any questions yet. If anybody has questions, we'll wait a few minutes here and answer any questions that you may have. But thank you all for joining. And if you'd like to do a more personal training, we're happy to do one-on-one trainings with you guys after this.
Yeah.
So just reach out to us. Just let us know.
Yeah. If you have any questions, definitely reach out. We can get partners set up with their own workspace. So if you want to demo this internally, let us know. There's some caveats with that, so we'll have to talk through that. In particular, anytime you bring a customer in for a POC, we do have to bring our SASE group in for any POC. But if you as a partner, we can get you set up for you to run this internally on your own network for testing purposes, no problem. We're probably going to try to follow this up with a more of an Edge Connect SD-WAN conversation, maybe in June or July. So stay tuned for that, and kind of show you how you can bring in your SSE into your overall WAN edge. We also have some workshops, some technical workshops that we're going to start offering on both SD-WAN and SSE. So stay tuned for that, and let us know.
Yeah, we do have a couple questions now, Ryan. Jeff asked, do you have to add individual endpoints for each connection?
I'm not sure what you mean for individual endpoints. So you would need your endpoint technically, from my perspective, and let me pull up this one slide here. So your endpoint over here is your end user. So that's going to be whoever's connecting and whatever device they're connecting from, whether it's their phone, tablet, laptop. You need connectors is the only thing that you need on the customer side, and those would be within the space where they want to create that VPN or that ZTNA tunnel. So you only need those connectors in that location where you need that connectivity at, if that makes sense.
And Jeff, I enabled your mic if you have add-on questions to that.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. So what I was asking was, when you created like those bookmarks for the rules, like
Yes.
go into RDP and you assign that 192.168.1.30, do you need for each user to have their own assigned destination?
No, that destination is out there for anyone. So you create that destination once. So I created once, like here for ClearPass, or the one I created earlier for 30, I created that once. That's available to whomever I create a rule for. So you only create your destination once, and then you go in and start looking at your policies. Obviously, when you start creating your rules here, those are start to grow over time. So you're going to have various rules for various users and groups, and some are going to be blocked to certain applications. But yeah, you create the destination one time, and then that's available for all users depending on the policy and rule that you create for that user or for that group. There may be an instance where you actually see more than one rule pointed to that same destination, just depending on how you build out your rules and policies.
Okay, thanks.
And then Anthony asked what's happening with Juniper Networks. Anthony, I wish we had an update for you. The information that we've been given is that we're expecting the deal to go through by the end of this year. But they've told us that the portfolios will remain separate. So we still look at Juniper as our competition until the sale goes through. So unfortunately, not much of an update. If you guys know something, please let us know. We're kind of flying in the dark here as well. But everything we've been told is that they are going to continue to be our competitors for the foreseeable future, and that the portfolios will remain separate. Justin.
Yeah, Josh and Justin, just reach out to Austin or Lel,
Yeah.
if those are your account managers, and we can work on getting you guys set up for an actual demo account.
Yep. Or you can copy us both on the email or
Yep.
whatever.
We actually we'll probably need to pull in someone from the SASE side of the business. And actually, I had someone I was going to line up today. I'm very broad. I kind of support the whole portfolio of Aruba, Wi-Fi, switching, SASE, you name it. We do have some dedicated folks in the SASE space. So anyone that wants to get more of a deep dive and wants to really get out there and start selling SASE, that's when we would engage them and bring them in. We'll bring the experts in, so to speak. And definitely for any of getting you set up with a demo account, we would bring them in initially, just to walk us through that process. But yeah, just let Austin or Lel know, and we can make that happen.
Great. I think that was all the questions. If you guys think of any other questions, again, just email Lael or I, and we'll get you the answers that you need. But thank you all for joining. We appreciate you taking the time, and go sell some Aruba.
Yep. And
Perfect.
Austin, can you throw yours and Lel's email in chat too?
Oh yeah, I'll put I'll put that in the chat.
Well, thanks
Perfect.
everyone,
And
and
thank
definitely
you,
reach
Ryan,
out to
so
us.
much.
Yep. Thank
Yep.
you.
Have a great
right.
day, everyone.
Bye, all.
Bye-bye.